Welcome to Someone's Gotta Drive. I want to make a quick trigger warning for those who may be triggered easily by sexual abuse, domestic violence, drug abuse, parental drug abuse. This podcast isn't always for the faint of hearts, but gives some validation to people who need it most. In my last podcast, I had mentioned how I had left my ex-husband. And it was October, and I had also decided shortly after leaving my husband to just kind of have fun with one of my friends. And even though we were kind of exclusively dating, it really wasn't. It wasn't like a marriage. It wasn't something too terribly serious. We tried to be serious, but once again, it seemed that I had fallen for someone with some addictive tendencies. Um, a friend of ours was turning like 18 and she wanted to go to the club for the first time. And I had honestly never been to the club before. So we went down Baltimore City. Someone had like a van and they drove us all down there. And, it was kind of weird to me that like random men would just come and like bump and grind on you. And honestly, not really good looking men. It's not like it is in the movies or in Sex and the City. Not all the men are really that great looking. Just putting that out there. And I had gone with my friend, hoping that would be like a him and me thing. And he ended up getting 3 sheets to the wind sloshed, picking up on other girls, pissing his pants. Like, I don't know what in the world I saw in him, except for that the sex was really great. We really tried, but this was also a guy who had 3 kids, left his wife as well. We were both just kind of in this like leaving spouses and trying to figure ourselves out kind of moment. I continued to work for this marketing firm and, spend some time with my mom and dad, back and forth, but they were going through their thing. I was trying to go through mine, and it was really hard to really be back home because they had rules. In all fairness, yeah, it is their house. And my mom had rules, and my dad honestly just didn't care. He was just like, you go do you. I understand. Your mother does not. And, my mom was just kind of like, you're still married. You shouldn't be seeing somebody. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. And I was just kind of like, I am separated. I am 23 years old. I have also been on my own for the past 5 years. Let me be real. And, I've tried doing everything the right way. I've tried living the perfect life and to live by all the rules. And at that point I was like, rules be damned. Like, they're out the window. I need to figure myself out. And so I was trying to figure myself out in the middle of a housing recession. So I'm broke. I barely make any money. I barely make enough money to even pay rent and, to pay other bills and whatnot. And I just kind of was trying to figure it out and find myself. That Thanksgiving and Christmas, I also didn't spend with that friend because, like I said, he had children. They lived with his mom, actually. So for holidays, we would pack up our things, we would go separate ways, and after the holidays, we would come back and have fun together again. And like I said, I continued to work for that marketing firm, but we weren't really making a lot of money. We were going literally door to door, knocking on people's doors. It was cold. It was miserable. And so I decided to try to go find another job. And shortly after Christmas, I had gotten a job fundraising for St. Jude at the local mall. And you get a lot more donations during the holidays because that's just how people are. They're in a giving mood. But the company I was working for was really trying to push hard to see if they could keep their spot at the mall. So they were, hiring more and really trying to see what they could do to reinforce, keeping that spot and trying to get more donations. And it was a pretty well-paying job. It was an hourly job. And so I got that. But let me tell you what, the most boring job, because honestly, after the holidays, there isn't anyone coming to the mall. And even though we had a really good spot, which was like right by an exit, honestly, it wasn't doing too well. So I got let go, simply because they were losing their spot. It wasn't, it was just the way it was. And we decided to actually go to Michigan. The leader that we had been working with in that marketing campaign, we were also living with. And he had known somebody also at a different marketing company out in Michigan who was like, yeah, bring you and your team, come on out here. And so on the day that President Obama was inaugurated, I pretty much was like, all right, mom and dad, gonna let you know now I'm going to Michigan. I'm gonna try to do something. I have my cell phone on me. I cashed my final check from, that fundraising St. Jude and made my way to Michigan with them. It was cold. It was snowy. I feel like we hit Ohio and crosswinds hit us like there was no tomorrow. And I remember getting to Michigan. Actually, first we got to Akron, Ohio first and spent the night in a pretty crappy hotel. And I remember dyeing my hair that night to try to look perfect for this company. And the next morning we made our way to a little north of Detroit, Michigan, about an hour north of Detroit. And when we got there, everyone was very welcoming, but it was a very corporate style feeling. And the owner of this company was like, yeah, your leader had made like $1 million working for me and then went off to go do his own thing. And so they made it sound like we were going to make millions of dollars, like we were going to be great. And so I'm like, all right, what's the campaign? What are we marketing? And they're like, well, you're not really marketing, you're selling. And I'm like, okay, what are we selling? Coupon books. Coupon books for fundraisers. These fundraisers, you tell these people that for $30 they get this coupon book and it helps this, local school, to fundraise for them. But here's the thing. We're an hour north of Detroit, Michigan. Sometimes we're going to Detroit. Sometimes we're going to Flint. Sometimes, we're going to surrounding areas. We're going door to door, B2B. During the worst housing recession in history. On top of that, all the car factories at the time had been like shutting down, furloughing, laying people off because no one was buying cars. So most of the people in the area that we were in had no money. And they did not have $30 to spend on some coupon book to go spend more money at places because they were all on unemployment and food stamps, and that was already starting to run out as well. And I was like, this doesn't seem so great. In the meantime, I did have a few $100s from my paycheck, and my leader, we'll call him, is trying to be like, no, you can't get Chinese food. That money has to help all of us survive. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's my money, not your money. And now he's trying to like manage my money and essentially take my money. And while working there, I had met this gentleman, and he kind of worked for the company, but like in a different division. And his next assignment was going to be in like San Diego, California. And he looked at me and just said, if you don't want to be here in Michigan, I have no problem taking you and maybe one or two other people out to San Diego with me. And I was like, Michigan, It is January going into February. We are constantly walking on at least 4 feet of snow at all times. And don't get me wrong, the people were friendly, but this, if you're looking to make money, this is not the place to do it right now. And I remember talking to my friend who, like I said, we were dating. He went with me to Arizona and he was like, I'm going to stay here. And honestly, you should probably leave because if you don't, the leader's going to have you fired and you're going to be stuck. And I was like, gotcha. So I hopped in a truck, called my parents and said, just so you know, I'm on my way to San Diego, California for my next assignment. And on our way there, the gentleman had said to me, well, we have to stop in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona. We have to help another office out real quick, and then we'll make our way out to San Diego. The way it sounded to me was, okay, so we're probably there for maybe a few days, not 2 months. So I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And so they had gotten us, the office that we were working for had gotten us a hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona at this Ramada. And it was beautiful. To me, it was stunning. It was a really nice place. And we get to the office that day and it's much, much stricter. No phones are to be on. You are to be there at like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. You start with meetings for about an hour or two, and then you get out into the field. You take off your high heels, you put on sneakers, and you literally walk door to door looking for nicer, newer cars with cracked windshields. And in Arizona, because it is nothing but rock and sand, is common for rocks to kick up cracked windshields. And so they do have a law that says that the insurance company is not allowed to raise their rates for using them to replace the windshields on their vehicles. So another great thing about this is that you're not asking for money. You are just going up to them saying, hey, your windshield's cracked. Who's your insurance company? I'll get this taken care of for you right away. They'll come out wherever you are, whenever you want them to. And for every windshield that I had replaced, I got like $45. And some days you would get nothing. And some days you would get like four of them. And so some days, once again, because it's sales, you're not making anything, but on other days you're making $200-300 a day. And so I was actually making really good money walking around, and it wasn't too hot because it was, at this point it was February. And so I had done this for about 6 weeks. And at first the office didn't quite care for me because I was kind of like, I am me, I am a little outspoken, but I followed their rules. They didn't have confidence in me at first because they didn't know who I was, but my numbers proved. And so they had said to me, if you want to stay here in Arizona and work at this office, we would love to have you if you just want to stay here full time. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. I was kind of liking Arizona. I didn't have a car, but there was mass transit and lots of sidewalks. The housing wasn't too terribly expensive. The cost of living was still similar to what it was like in Maryland. But I was thinking to myself, this actually isn't too terribly bad. I mean, yeah, it's going to get hot, and yeah, it might rain maybe 6 days out of the year, but it really wasn't too terribly bad. I actually was kind of liking Arizona. It was just hard because, once again, you're working 6 days a week. The only day off you get is on a Sunday. And after the hotel ran out, we were kind of subletting from someone. So I finally got my own room. And I just slept on the floor. I think I might have slept even on an air mattress, but I slept on the floor. I had my own room, but it was with a bunch of these guys. And honestly, I got really drunk one night, and blacked out. And the next morning, they were telling everybody about it at work, at the office. And I was just like completely mortified. And I just was like, it was the first time this had ever happened. I wasn't really a drinker. I was really trying to, like I said, figure it out. But I guess I hadn't eaten that much that day. And I just went to the bathroom and passed out on the toilet. And they had to like jimmy the door and get me out of the bathroom, the only bathroom that unfortunately the house had. And so then the owner from the San Diego office came out, and he must have taken my binder or something. But if you did not have your binder, if you did not have your stuff, you would be punished. And I was like, where is it? What's going on? And so I had messaged somebody, and I remember my boss, because I lived with him at the time, screaming at me, how dare you? How dare you? You're going to get that person in trouble. They could get thrown into a wall by the boss for having their phone go off. How dare? And I'm like, well, if you stole my thing or if you took my thing, I need to know, because like that's my livelihood, right? That's my like. And so it was just like no one was ever looking out for me again. I had to look out for myself, which that's the real world. But to then blame me that someone else is going to get in trouble because I'm reaching out to them to see if they have my work binder, which is once again my livelihood, my money. This is how I make a living. Like, if you're really going to get on me about that, then there's a bigger issue here. But that's what was starting to scare me. It was almost cult-like. Working for this company, if they found out you were dating somebody in the company, you were fired. If they found out you were drinking or smoking, you were fired. If they found out that you reached out to somebody because you think they might have had your book, like it was like you could get fired for sneezing the wrong way. On top of that, here I am living with these kind of people, and they're like, well, they also have control of what you do outside of work. Once again, dating, partying, smoking, anything like that. And I was just like, this is starting to get really strange. And so I went ahead and I started not feeling safe. I started feeling like this was a cult and like I needed to get out fast. Well, while I was in a meeting one day, I kept getting these phone calls, and I had my phone on silent or vibrate or something like that. And at first I just didn't think anything of it, but it just kept happening. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have a sick mother out in Maryland. I have to go take this. So I go take it, and it's my ex-husband's family. And I'm like, is everything okay? Is he okay? And they're like, he's okay. But my daughter stole your car and totaled it. And I said, well, that's not really my problem. I left it to him. He was supposed to put in his name. Why are you calling me? And they're like, oh, well, funny story. He didn't switch it into his name yet. It's still in your name. Oh. And they were like, what would you like for us to do? We will pay for damages. And I said, okay, then pay him for the damages. Give him the money for the car. It's probably worth $1,000. Give him $1,000. And then I get back into my meeting. Later on that day, I proceed to call my ex, and I said, hey, I just want to check in, make sure you're okay. And he's like, yeah, everything's fine. Why? And I'm like, well, I just want you to know that I got a call from your family saying that the car got totaled. And he's like, I told them not to call you. And I'm like, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, I was dating this girl and she was watching my cousin's kids. And I guess she wasn't watching them close enough because they took the keys. They took your car. They thought they knew how to drive a stick shift, and they totaled the car. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I know that you were seeing somebody while we've been separated, and I have been too. But we're not seeing each other anymore. And I was like, well, I'm in Arizona. And he's like, what? And so I explained to him, how I made it down here and how things are going. And I'm like, if you want, we can talk later. I have to work. And he's like, okay. And he's like, I also want to let you know that I sobered up. And I'm like, once again, that's great, but let's talk about this later. And he's like, okay. And so I go home at the end of that night. I had some dinner and I sit in my room and I'm like, okay, I'm home now. I'm off of work. Let's talk. And he's like, okay. He's like, what's it like in Arizona? And I'm like, it's warm. It's nice. I've been trying to look for an apartment. All the apartments have like utilities included and a pool and a gym. It's really nice down here and it's warm. It's so warm. And he was like, really? Well, I got sober. It took me a while, but I went cold turkey and I got off the pills and I'm thinking about going to automotive school. And I was like, well, that's good. Get a skill under your belt. And he's like, yeah. And I'm looking at this college called UTI, and actually they're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I was like, well, that would be really great. Like you could bring the dog, pack a car, come on down here. And I'll get an apartment, I'll work, you go to school. And I mean, apartments at the time were like $400 a month. Like it was not that expensive at all. I was like, we could definitely make this happen. And so he was like, so you mean like we should get back together? I was like, I don't have a problem with that as long as you're sober. But if you're on drugs, no, I'm not doing this again. And he was like, I understand. And so, fell asleep that night and woke up the next morning and, started talking to the office manager and saying, hey, you said you really liked having me and, whatnot. And what would you think if I decided to stay here permanently? And he was like, I really like that idea. I would love for you to come and work for me. It really would be great. But the guy I was working for, who I was also living with, was like, I don't think so. You're not going to do that. You're mine. And I was like, yeah, but I want to stay in Arizona. And he was like, well, you can't do that. I'm not going to allow you. This, the boss that I work for isn't going to allow you. And I was just kind of like, you can't really tell me what to do. Like, if I want to do this, I can do this. And that's where it started getting a little scary dangerous. So I talked to my ex-husband that night again, and I explained to him what was said to me. And he's like, that doesn't sound right. He was like, it sounds like you might be in a dangerous situation. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't really know yet, but we'll work it out. In the meantime, I used to call my mother every morning before I went to work. 8 o'clock Arizona time was somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock, Eastern Standard Time. So it was a good time for me to be able to call my mom. She was still sober, not hopped up on anything yet. And we always had the best conversations then. Well, at night was when my uncle would call me and say, your parents are separating. You need to come home. You need to come home and take care of your mother because someone's got to take care of her if your father is leaving. And I would be like, I know what the deal is. The deal is that he's going to find her a house close by so he can still check in on her. But I don't need to come home. And you have to come home. You're in the worst place. So many girls get kidnapped there. You have to come home. You have to come home and take care of your mother and take care of your family. Your family needs you. You need to get back here. And after a few days of this, I'm like, well, I guess I could make it work with my ex out in Maryland. And no, it's not really feeling exactly the safest here out in Arizona either. It's definitely feeling cult-like. It's feeling like, these people, this company, these men are trying to control me. And so I started teetering with the idea of coming back home. And my boss says to me, well, I'm not taking you to an airport unless there's an emergency. And I said, well, you know, my mom's sick. They're calling me to ask me to come home and take care of her. And so I had my sister text me. Mom was in the hospital with some heart issues, and she has since passed away. And I pulled out the waterworks and faked my way out of Arizona. And he was like, what? And I was like, just that suddenly, I told you she was sick. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And so my sister used her credit card to buy me a plane ticket out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I got on the first flight I could back to Baltimore. I called my ex and said, I'm coming home. We'll discuss why, but I'm coming home and I'm coming home quickly. Everything's okay, but I'm coming home. And he said, okay, I'll pick you up from the airport. I got on that plane and I never looked back. And as much as I would love to go out to Arizona and vacation one day, I can say this, I don't know if I would ever want to work out there again in marketing. When I got off the plane and I saw my ex for the first time, all I could think of was, wow, he's so skinny. His hair was ragged. He was so skinny, but he was so happy to see me. And I was really happy to see him, but I was also really nervous. I knew what I was about to walk into. I was walking back into what I had seen before. Just because he was off the drugs didn't mean he was going to be forever. He could relapse. I've seen it happen too many times with my mother. He drove me back over to my parents' house, and I decided to go spend the night over at his mom's house with him that night, and finally in my own bed that I had let him have. And I remember my parents being like, okay, you do you. Happy to see you. Happy you're safe. I just wanted them to see me for the first time, even if it was for 5 minutes. I grabbed some warmer clothes because honestly, I just came back from 85-degree Arizona at the time, and it was probably like end of March, beginning of April. So, I was wearing warmer clothes. I didn't even have warm clothes to get from the airport to the car. So I picked up some warm clothes, some pajamas, and I went to my ex-mother-in-law's house. And she was not too thrilled to see me.